This is absolutely ridiculous. A writer has revealed a wild mock draft that has the New York Islanders doing something that has not been done in ages, all to bring home a hometown hero. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Islanders Digest and really talk about how likely it is that the New York Islanders make a move to bring James Hagens to New York, and also how likely it is that ownership gets involved with a move like that. Before we get into it, I want to say thank you to all 200 of you who are now subscribed to the channel. Your support means a lot as we try to bring out more and more Islanders content every single day. Our next goal is 500 subscribers, so if you have not already, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more Islanders content. Now let's really talk about these rumors, because as we all know, there have been a ton of posts about how the Islanders have to draft James Hagens, how they have to bring the Islanders fan, the kid who grew up on Long Island, to the New York Islanders with the first overall pick. The problem is, on almost no mock drafts is James Hagens projected to go first overall, at least not until the New York Islanders got the first overall pick, and suddenly people realize there's a realistic chance the Islanders do select James Hagens. And as more people talk about it on Twitter, you know the Islanders owners, especially John Ledecky, who is constantly on Long Island, is going to be hearing the talk, and perhaps this could influence a decision for them to push the next general manager of the New York Islanders to make a move to select James Hagens. And we're going to talk about what that can look like, and we saw an example on a mock draft, and while I don't think it is the best example, it shows what a move could look like. Let's get right into this trade that would send the Blackhawks first round pick, 3rd overall, and the Blackhawks second round pick, 34th overall, to the Islanders, and a prospect, Jack Pridham. He really is a prospect that is a hit or miss if he's going to make the NHL, not going to have a really big impact. In exchange, the Islanders would give the first round pick, 1st overall, and their second round pick next season. Now, I'm going to start this and say this writer did not do their homework, because the Islanders do not have a second round pick next year. The Blackhawks do. They have the Islanders second round pick. If you're wondering how the Blackhawks got that pick, the Islanders sent Josh Bailey to the Blackhawks so they can buy him out, and that's how that happened. Although this does open a really interesting opportunity, and something I didn't really think of until I saw this article. We're going to go on to talk about how the rest of it would look up. And another way the Islanders can move back in to get James Hagens, because one option is trading down, but they can also move back into the draft. And this is also getting a lot of consideration, even from people who cover the Islanders regularly, on what it would take and how likely it is, because it is definitely a possibility. And like I said, if something like this happens, it's going to be likely because ownership pushed hard for it. And if ownership wants a Long Island kid to play for the Islanders, thinking it will sell more tickets or just build more buzz around the team, that's what's going to happen if that's what they want. We'll see. Personally, I really hope ownership does not get involved. But what do I know? We'll see what happens. And who knows? Maybe James Hagens is the best player in this draft. We just don't know it yet. But based on all the projections, he should be going at earliest 3rd. And I do want to keep in mind as we get into this video, I am not at all bashing James Hagens. I know for the previous 2 years, James Hagens has been the #1 ranked prospect. He slipped for good reason, although I don't think it was all his fault. Still, he is an incredible prospect, and I'm not going to be miserable if the Islanders get him. I know I've been very vocal on this channel about how they should pick Schaefer, and if they don't absolutely fall in love with Schaefer, the second pick they should have is Misa. But if the Islanders do end up getting Hagens, I'm obviously going to root for him, and I'd be really excited. Just don't think it's the best idea, which is why this has the Islanders trading down. Now, I would argue not the best move, especially for a trade like this, would not be worth it. Though the first round pick that the second round pick that the Blackhawks have that belongs to the Islanders from the Josh Bailey deal is a really interesting point, because as we know, this is supposed to be the summer of offer sheets. There's been so much talk about offer sheets, and in order to offer sheet a player, a young player from another team, you need your second round pick in the next draft. At least you're going to have a decent offer. That is, unless you're going to try to offer sheet with a value that makes you lose your first round pick, which would be an absolute disaster for the Islanders, because they could very well be a lottery team next season. In fact, as of right now, they're probably projected to be a lottery team next season. Not saying they're going to be one of the worst teams, but I don't think they're projected to make the playoffs as of this moment. So trading that pick would be an absolute disaster. So if the Islanders see an opportunity where they can get their second round pick back and have the opportunity to offer sheet players, especially if that's what the next GM wants to do, then that would definitely make a trade really interesting. Realistically, for a move up, it's not going to cost that much, because there really isn't that much of a step down from Misa and Schaefer to Hagens. I do want to make that clear as we're going to talk about all these players in the next coming days as we get closer to the draft. I do think it is pretty close, But Misa and Schaefer are both definitely better players than Hagens, which is why you expect at least a late first round pick or a second round plus pick to move up in the draft. A trade like this would not work. Let's really go through how this mock draft has the rest of things going, and that's going to really lead us into the other way the Islanders can move back up into this draft. And I think that is something that is exciting a lot of Islander fans. There's been a lot of talk about it on Twitter, and it could work for one of the teams involved, as we're going to talk about, because the Islanders are not the only team that moved up this year, and that makes everything a lot more interesting, especially when it comes to James Hagens and the Islanders potentially moving back in. But first, this mock draft has Schaefer getting selected first overall by Chicago. I really wonder if Chicago would actually pick Misa based on what they have and what they need. Still, Schaefer and Misa are going to be the first and second overall pick, unless the Islanders do something absolutely absurd and pick Hagens first overall, which would be a mistake at the very least, just because they can move down and get him later, as we're going to see in this mock draft. Then second overall, San Jose would take Michael Misa, another incredible player. And if the Islanders do not believe in Schaefer, then Misa is the logical choice for the New York Islanders. I want to make that really clear. We've been focused on Schaefer. Misa, if he's a New York Islander, be excited, and he's likely going to be the player who makes the biggest impact in the NHL the quickest. And then this mock draft has James Hagens going at third overall for the Islanders, and it says Hagen is a standout offensive talent, dazzles with exceptionally puck skills, creative playmaking, shifty skating that dismantles defenses, his elite vision, quick decisions, fuels scoring chances, projecting him as a future first-line forward, though boosting strength and defensive consistency will elevate his game-breaking potential. And yeah, Hagens does have game-breaking potential. If you just watch a few games of him playing in college, the numbers were not all there. Hagens is a great player. And frankly, he's only moving down in this draft because we now have this really interesting top 5 of players where it's really, really close. And although the Islanders are only going to consider the top 3 players, especially with if they don't want the first 2, Hagens is the obvious choice because of the connections to the area. But the 2 players we're going to talk about a little after also do have some benefits. And I really think this is a draft where you have 5 really strong contenders and it really drops off. I do think there's a higher tier with Schaefer and Misa, which is why we're talking about a trade down. But really, in the top 5, you cannot go wrong in this draft. And 4 and 5 is where this really gets interesting, because if this trade doesn't happen, and this is Chicago's pick, and Chicago does make their pick, it is pretty unlikely that their pick is going to be Hagens. Chicago already has Bedard, a game-breaking talent, and one who is similarly not too big. One of the knocks on Hagens, not that he's small, but he is 5'11", and they already really have that with Bedard. So there's a lot of talks that if the Chicago Blackhawks do stay, if there's no move up, the Chicago Blackhawks are likely going to pick either Porter Martone or Anton Frondel. Personally, I think they would definitely pick Frondel, and there's a lot to like with Frondel. We're really focusing on the situation here because realistically, the Islanders don't have to worry about Porter Martone or Frondel because they have the first overall pick, and these are, while great players, not going to be going first overall. Still, the team that you have to pay attention to is both these teams, honestly. Nashville and Utah both have some interesting connections and could work for the Islanders for trading back into the draft, because you don't have to trade your first overall pick to get one of these picks to pick Hagens. And as I said, with the Blackhawks likely not to pick Hagens, he's going to be available definitely at 4, potentially at 5. And this is where things get really interesting. This actually has been talked about a lot on Twitter, and Islander fans asking what it would take to get back into the top 5. And Stefan Rosner, just to clarify right here, this is not him reporting that this is going to happen. This is more him talking about what it would take for the Islanders to get back in the top 5. And the key player here is Noah Dobson. Noah Dobson is a player the Islanders very well may trade to get back into this draft. We talked about it a little bit on whether or not the Islanders are going to trade Dobson. I still don't think it is the best idea to trade Dobson, though if they do trade Dobson and they can get a guy like Hagens, this could be really exciting for the future of the Islanders and bring the hometown hero home without the Islanders sacrificing not selecting the first overall selection, the best player in the draft. And so it would likely take Dobson, plus, I would say another asset. Dobson's not going to get it on its own. And typically, you wouldn't see something like this happen because a team in this position needs young players. But Utah is in a very interesting position. They just missed the playoffs. They are playing in a brand new arena. And realistically, right now, they not a new arena, but they're in like a brand new town. And realistically, they want to make the playoffs next season. They were so close. That's why they're at 4 and not 2, because they were only 1 spot away from making the playoffs. They were that close. And a player like Dobson on their defense could get it done. And that is why Utah is an X factor and where the Islanders can trade back in the draft. And if that doesn't happen, we do have to also talk about Nashville. Typically, I would say Nashville, after the disastrous season they had, would not even be relevant. But because Barry Trotz is the GM, you wonder if maybe he fell in love with Dobson as well when he was a coach, and perhaps he wants to get that team turned around now. I mean, I wouldn't say he's on the hot seat, but it has not been a good first year. The fans are getting really frustrated in Nashville, and he has an older team because of what he did in free agency. So I think it's also worth noting if Utah didn't select James Hagens either, which is a good I think it's a good possibility. If Anton Frandel goes third, Porter Martone would be Utah's choice. I do think it's flipped around. And this is another reason why I think the Islanders have to be careful when trading this first overall pick, because we're talking about how James Hagens can slip as low as 5th overall. And definitely, if he slips at 5th overall even further, the Islanders should definitely work the phones and see if they can get him back, or get him. But in my opinion, you got to be careful. You can't risk your first overall pick to move down and select this player, because clearly he's not as much of a lock as the other two players are in Matthew Schaefer and Michael Misa. At least those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments, would you like to see the Islanders do one of these trades? Do you think it's likely the Islanders do trade back into this draft or move back to select James Hagens? And let me know if you want to see the Islanders try to make a move to bring James Hagens to New York. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. My name is Patrick Nilan. This is Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.